Hold on. Okay, so this is the beauty of early game
So can we
by
take a second to
Riloe.
appreciate this little moment right here? Every game does its version of this moment a bit differently, but they're all so important because this is a moment that you'll only experience once. I was a couple
This
hours in here
quality's so
and just
bad.
finished a little side quest, and I decided to climb this tower. And when I got to the
There you
top, I got a real look for the first time at the massive open world in front of me, at all these places that I would one day presumably go. And I just sort of paused for a second to
Assassin's Creed did this a lot too,
take it all in.
back when it was great.
It's a moment of gameplay that people don't often talk about because it's not the most bombastic, it's not the most impressive or
But
over
it's
the
the
top,
one that hits
but
you.
it is, in my opinion, one of the most memorable.
It's the one that makes you look back and be like, this is where we started, and this is like all the opportunities I have.
It's seeing the vault in the distance in Half-Life Alyx or the Citadel in 2. It's looking across the desert for the first time at the sun shining through the mountaintop in Journey. It's scanning the hills and beyond when you first spawn on the shore in DayZ. It's that first little hike to the top of a mountain on a new seed in Minecraft. Every version of it in every game gives you a slightly different emotional beat, a slightly different feel, depending on the purpose of that given game. But they all do have one thing in common. This moment, once you've had it, will never happen again. I'm talking about that key transition point in the early game, not the literal beginning, the first seconds of controllable gameplay where you're readjusting sensitivity settings or changing keybinds. But after that, after you've been thrust into the world completely blind, when you've gotten a second to get comfortable, and the game then gives you a peek at what's to come, what the world out there has to offer or take from you. But right here, you aren't quite ready to actually get out there and see it firsthand.
Nope.
At least, not quite yet.
Very nice.
Building an open world is about immersion, about the transition from one area to the next seamlessly, but it's also about how you interact with that world and how it pushes back. This is absolutely true for the sponsor of today's video, Dying Light the Beast. In 2015, we first parkoured our way through Dying Light as Kyle Crane. And in summer of 2025, he's back, but things have changed. Undergoing captivity and testing for 13 years, Crane is now infected with an experimental zombie virus and will have to use the inhuman power that it's granted him, for better or worse, to protect diminishing survivors or take revenge on those who made him this way. Dying Light is back in all the ways people have come to love. Zombies will be docile in the day and hyper-aggressive at night, and your agility
When I first heard of this, I thought it was an expansion, but no, it's a new game,
key
I
to
guess.
surviving the hordes. But Castor Woods is an untamed open world. Wilderness, swamps, urban environments, lab facilities,
Man,
and while
chat,
Crane may have gotten some upgrades, the odds
this
are
lasagna
definitely
is
stacked
insane.
against him. He's not the only beast out here. I don't know, from what I'm seeing, maybe think twice about taking a walk in the woods at night, unless you want to be on a first-name basis with volatiles or worse. The beautiful open world of Dying Light the Beast is coming in summer of 2025, so wishlist the game now using the link in my description or pinned comment, and you'll be jumping through those rooftops in no time.
Chat, if this interests you, go on the Riloe channel.
Thank you again to Dying Light the Beast for
Go
help.
on the Riloe channel, his game, his video, The Beauty of Early Game, and claim the link, okay? I want this guy to succeed and be able to keep making good content, because he's not a greedy creator, so help him out if you want to
support the channel today.
Exactly. You want to support his channel.
The early game is about learning, and if the game is well designed in a way that you shouldn't even really notice, how the world around you actually works. You might naturally investigate little areas in the starter sections and be rewarded with physical explanations of game mechanics, learning that, say, some people don't exactly like it when you point a weapon in their face, and that if you wait and let things play out, sometimes direct action isn't necessary at all. Or here in Stalker 2, this is one of the first times that I really strayed outside the immediate starter town of Zalicia, and I found this anomalous area, the Bulba. There are anomalies all over the game, of course, which I was used to and expected, but this was unique. It felt like it had its own personality. It taught me that there were these special named anomalous areas in the game. It also taught me that anomalies could hurt me in new ways that I didn't expect, that I could use the world to my advantage to avoid being hurt. And it taught me that if I was smart, if I paid attention and questioned the environment, solved little mini puzzles, that I'd likely be rewarded for being daring. The Bulba is such a perfect little early game area because it does all of this seamlessly. You're never told to go here, or at least I wasn't. It's just placed in such a way, designed with such intrigue that almost every player will choose to risk death just to see what's up with it. It feels like it's always been here, just waiting, beckoning along for someone to test it out.
That's what we
The
call
early game
good,
teaches you to be
good map design.
curious, to test the waters by showing you that whatever you've seen here, there's more out there. And it's likely stranger, more dangerous, and more rewarding. The weird ball that I found inside the Bulba was not only the first special modified object type of artifact that I found, there you go, the game's teaching me about a category of artifacts in the world by just showing me an example early on. It was the first artifact that I found in the game, period, and I'm never selling it. As soon as I had left the Bulba, I experienced another first, my first emission, a staple of the Stalker series, but my second emission was the most memorable one. I had just gotten to Garbage, a familiar location to the series, and I was just exploring around to see what I recognized when the emission hit, and I had to desperately run for any cover I could see, the closest of which happened to be a train station that featured repeatedly in the first game, also in a relatively early game section. As I entered, it was this little interesting moment of familiarity. I knew this place, but things had changed. The space had the sense of having persisted in the decades since it had last been rendered. It had grown naturally in some ways. New people had come and gone independently of how we'd interacted with it. Backtracking is often the word.
So, Stalker 2 takes place in the same area as the first one. I did not know that.
That we use to describe repeated visits to the same area in the same game. It features heavily in everything from open world RPGs to linear story games, but this is more what I'd call, I guess, temporal backtracking, a physical callback, if you will. Specifically when you return to an early game area from a prior entry in the same series.
Oh, never mind.
Stalker does this basically all the time, the result of a game series in which every entry takes place in the exact same location, the Chernobyl exclusion zone, but how this return to a familiar early game space is presented can make the player feel utterly different things.
I thought he was talking about backtracking within games and not within the series. Never mind. One that does that, I guess, is Assassin's Creed Rogue.
The Rookie Village, the starter area from the original in 2024's Stalker 2, is this amazing little feeling of coming home for the player, but also for the game world itself. It's been literally decades since the first players came here in Shadow of Chernobyl, and in universe, the same amount of time has passed. Everything looks a little different. Relationships have changed and developed. Reputations have been soiled. It's familiar, welcoming, and bittersweet all at once, like returning to a childhood home after many years. The world has changed, and so have you.
I was speaking with my
But what if instead of that sort of fond familiarity, what if it was a place that you never, ever wanted to return to?
Uh-oh.
This is one of my favorite sequel backtracks in all of media. In Dead Space 2, a setback while trying to escape Titan Station means that Isaac Clarke has to return to the USG Ishimura, the setting of the first game. The Ishimura has been haunting Isaac's psyche for all of Dead Space 2, literally haunting him, and constantly reminding him and the player of what happened there, taunting him with the idea that the body of his girlfriend Nicole, whose death he feels responsible for, is still entombed somewhere inside.
Yeah.
And it's not until this moment
That's the Ishimura.
that we're even told that not only does the ship still exist, but it is intact and is docked very nearby. And in order to escape this current nightmare, you're gonna have to go straight through it. Presenting the player with the exact same early game locations they interacted with, prodding them with that tension all over again,
Very nice.
but with this new added layer that this time you know what's coming, what's lurking behind the crime scene plastic, covering up the scars and blood of the last time you were here. It's one of the best and most affecting cases of presenting both the player and player character with a setting that causes them to feel the same exact anxieties and fears.
That's amazing.
Absolutely
I love it.
perfect ludonarrative harmony, if you will. What makes it great is that, like the player, Isaac was a novice the first time he was here. He didn't know what he was doing, but he's come a long way. The real killer here is the fear, the back of your mind knowledge that the danger you'll face may have scaled along with your experience since the first time you walked these corridors. And when you do finally face that
You
danger,
find it sometimes within games. Like in Sekiro, the hill you die on first time in the game is the hill you fight the final boss on, you know? That's pretty cool.
moment does not disappoint. I'll always remember this area. It'll always take me back to that first moment of fear and anticipation. I'll always remember the first time I walked out onto the road in Corden, or the first time that I looked out across the highway at the immensity of the Interchange Mall.
Oh man.
Forming memories based on experience is a key part of the early game. It's the foundation you build mentally on which your knowledge of the game's world is based on as you move through it and come to live in it. It's the same way that memories of spaces work in real life. When you think of a location, you'll likely be able to remember the first time that you were there. That moment will be a snapshot that forever defines not only that place, but your mindset at the time, how you were feeling, what your outlook on life was. Every time I pass through Zalicia, I remember the initial moments when I arrived the first time, sitting around a campfire with free stalkers as they played guitar and told jokes, selling things.
It's just like the sound of a fan, of a mid-sized white fan blowing in the wind reminds me of a summer where I was watching hockey and my team was getting absolutely dominated. And they lost. It was game 7 and they were losing and I was like, there's still a chance they can win. It was like something like 5-0 or something like that. And I will forever remember the feeling of not wanting to give up on them and sticking to the end, even though it was an unwinnable game.
Things to the barman, gazing up at the dirigible floating above the village at sundown for a second. The early game is so unbelievably important for this reason. It eases us into the world with things that are palatable, gives us this foundation, this little place mentally and physically to fall back on, so that we are encouraged to explore beyond that, to get curious a bit more and then a bit more as time goes on, just to see what else is out there.
I'll say, people have critiqued Assassin's Creed 3 a lot, because the intro is so long. But I don't mind long intros, because I am pretty easily brought back to how I was feeling when I re-explored the map. So I remember vividly like how it felt when I came back as adult Connor in the village, when I came back to the Dragon Tavern as Connor from the intro. It was just very nice, and I think that's why it's one of my favorites
There.
personally.
The little grindy things you need to complete at the start, finding this or that, talking to these NPCs, or taking out some easy starter enemy. You do this stuff not because it's inherently interesting, but actually because it isn't. It all gives you a taste of the larger world, a hint that there's more out there, but never giving you enough that you're overwhelmed or satisfied. It's a section of game design that is unquestionably key to a successfully built world, but in a way that is purposefully subtle. You shouldn't notice what the early game is teaching you if it's done well. It should all feel completely natural. It's
Then
like
you realize.
childhood, like going to school. If you immediately venture out as far as you possibly can right off the bat, there's a good chance you'll come up against something that you aren't prepared for. But if you take too much time with things that are easy, if you've never pushed boundaries and breached your comfort zone bit by bit, if you get too comfortable, there will eventually be nothing else for you here. You'll reach a point where you know you need to move on. There's an unclear, undefinable moment where you transition from the early to the mid-game, where you're in it. You're fully engaged with the outside world, with the confidence and resources to push your luck and really get adventurous. But that's what's beautiful about this little moment. You haven't seen any of that yet. Your imagination
exactly.
fills
It's
in
like-
the blanks. The possibilities are endless, and you
Exactly.
still have a comfortable home to come back to if you want. Of course, the possibilities aren't actually endless because it's a finite world. Out there, you'll find disappointment and probably make mistakes. Once you've moved beyond the early game, the
That's
complexities
alright.
of the experience will really make themselves clear, and you'll discover how far you can take things, where the boundaries are, and
That's part of
eventually
playing games.
how it all ends. But for one little moment, you get to be a kid again.
Exactly.
So the next time that you're in a spot like this, just take it in. Really appreciate the moment. Because you'll only get to have it once. And later on, when you've made it through who
That's
knows
deep.
what, you'll be standing somewhere and you'll be able to look back and go, yeah, I remember when I was back there. I'm Riloe and I like to talk about things that I think are interesting. Subscribe for more like this, and thank you so much for watching.
That's why it's interesting. Subscribe and follow Riloe.
So, if it's not obvious, I've really been enjoying Stalker 2 so far, and a huge part of the reason for making this video was that I knew I wanted to make something about it, but I hadn't progressed very far. I've just been having too much fun living in the zone and taking things really slow. So, I basically
Well,
just
well,
tried to,
well.
through this video, wrap my head around why that was. I am interested to hear what you think of Stalker 2, whether you're a new fan of the franchise like I am or played decades ago when the originals came out, or even before with the book and the film. Speaking of which, if you are a Stalker fan, please go check out my last video. It's a sort of absurdly deep dive into Stalker as an idea across all of media. Roadside Picnic,
not a
the book,
very
the
big
1979
fan
film
of Stalker,
and
but I
of course
respect it.
2007's Shatter of Chernobyl, and the real-life Chernobyl disaster, how all these things sort of intertwine. I think you'll dig it. The feedback has been incredibly kind, and as always, I thank you all so much for sharing your own experiences and feelings on the stuff that I love. And thank you so much again to Dying Light the Beast for supporting the channel today. Please go use my link to wishlist the game, which comes out in summer of 2025.
I
And
encourage
speaking
you
of
to do the
2025,
same.
It's coming up, and I have a pretty fun video in the works that I think you'll get a kick out of. So subscribe if you haven't, and leave a comment with the word nice if you're still watching. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will catch you very soon. Peace.
Peace. So yeah, I encourage you to click on the link in the description. Should be this first or second link. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.
With new jams and to advance your prehistoric, who I be is the question and the answer is rhetoric. With new jams and to advance your prehistoric, who I be is the question and the answer is rhetoric. Who you messing with? Who you playing with? 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 I'm the best. I'm the best.